SUI has been one of the best performing altcoins over the past couple of months, as it is up 247% from prices seen in late August. However, over the past week alone, this altcoin has actually pulled back about 13% from all-time highs. And in today's episode of the Everything Crypto Show, I want to take a look at some of the most important news that came out for SUI over the past week, including the network's very first outage, continued institutional adoption and interest in SUI through different investment products, as well as taking a look at the on-chain metrics and the price action. Now, before we hop into the content, just a friendly reminder that I am not a financial advisor, nor do I offer any sort of financial advice on YouTube. I am simply here for your crypto news and entertainment purposes. And if you do find the videos informative and entertaining, please consider hitting that sub and like button. And I appreciate all the support on the channel. You guys are absolutely amazing. And thank you so much for the 25,000 subs that we did hit last week. So without further ado, we are going to get right into today's altcoin of discussion, and that is going to be the SUI token, which is now down over 10% over the past week. So I do want to do a weekly recap for this altcoin and break down some of the most important news, including that network outage, the Van Eck investment product for SUI having over 110 million in total net assets. And then we're going to take a look at the on-chain data and discuss the upcoming Send token launch here, which is set to come in December. But first, I do want to take a look at Bitcoin and the altcoin index just to get an idea of general market structure, as we typically do. I think it's always worthwhile to look at that before we hop into the altcoin specific news. So taking a look at Bitcoin, you can actually see here, if we go on a daily, that we did get rejected just under the $100,000 zone. I think on CoinMarketCap, the highest price that was clocked for Bitcoin came in at about 99.6 to 99.7K. So just a couple $100 off of that $100,000 level, where I would imagine there are some pretty big sell walls sitting. Now, interestingly enough, what I've noticed is that money doesn't really appear to be leaving crypto completely. It just looks as if it is reshuffling a bit. So if we take a look at altcoins over the past week, we have Stellar up 174%, Sandbox and Decentraland up 115 and 87% respectively, HBAR up 64%, and Polkadot as well. And you can see down here, what I find interesting is that a lot of the altcoins rallying right now are altcoins from the previous cycle, while altcoins like SUI, which is a new altcoin on the market that has not yet gone through a full bull run, has actually pulled back over the past week. So a pretty interesting rotation of capital. However, I do think that once we see Bitcoin break 100K and once altcoins also begin to rally again, that SUI will continue to be a winner and an outperformer, as it has been for this bull cycle. And I do actually kind of like seeing this rotation of capital and breadth in the market. So yeah, Bitcoin stalling out at 100K right now, and yeah, we have seen that money kind of flow into alts, which I do think is pretty interesting and really bullish for the overall market, in my opinion. So now if we actually take a look at Total 3, this is the total crypto market cap minus Bitcoin and Ether. So effectively, it is the altcoin index bundled into one chart. And the one thing we can actually see here is that unlike Bitcoin, it is not in all-time high territory. In fact, it is still down about 17.5% from its 2021 highs. And I do think that we are entering the phase of the cycle where alts will begin to outperform Bitcoin. So the two key levels I'm eyeing when it comes to the altcoin index, the first one to the upside would be that $1 trillion zone of resistance. And to the downside, if we do see some sort of reversal in the markets and a broader pullback, I could actually see it potentially coming back down to this local top in March around the $788 billion zone. That would be about a decline of 15% on average for altcoins. And yeah, 20, 30, even 40 and 50% declines are not abnormal in bull markets. We saw it in the last bull cycle, and just something to be prepared for in case it did happen. But honestly, if we did see some sort of a back test here of this prior level of resistance for that March top, and then a continuation of this move to the upside, I do think that would also be a very bullish look for the altcoin market. So I'm eyeing that $1 trillion zone for the upside, 788 bill for the downside. And as always, I will keep you guys updated as the price action does does unfold. However, given that we are entering alt season, in my opinion, and just the early phases of alt season, I do think it's important to really take a look at alts that you believe will be outperformers for this bull cycle. And I do think that SUI is one of those, which is why we have been covering it so much on the channel. So I do want to go ahead and just kind of hop right into the SUI news over the past week. And the first thing I do want to talk about is the network outage that it did experience. So we can see here that it was down for nearly 2 hours due to a bug in transaction scheduling logic. And after 2.5 hours, network activity was restored to normal. So the SUI team did actually release a full article here, pretty much breaking down what happened. They said that on the morning of November 21st, SUI mainnet suffered a complete network halt. All validators were stuck in a crash loop, preventing all transaction processing. And they basically break down what happened over here. So they say the SUI network's object-based architecture allows us to process many different user transactions massively in parallel in a way that is not possible on most other networks. However, if multiple transactions are all writing to the same shared object, they must execute in sequential order, and there is a limit to how many transactions we can process that touch that specific object. Congestion control, the system that limits the rate of transactions writing to a single shared object, prevents the network from being overloaded with checkpoints that take too long to execute. And basically, they recently upgraded their congestion control system to improve shared object utilization by more accurately estimating the complexity of a transaction. And the code for the new mode, total gas budget with cap, had a bug that caused the issue. So I do really like how fast the SUI team was to fix the issue as well as address it through this article. And I did cover in a video earlier this week whether I thought that this was bullish or bearish for SUI. And honestly, I don't really think it's significant at all. I don't think it's a reason to be bearish. In fact, Solana was one of those chains that had several major network outages last cycle. And we can clearly see that it has been one of the biggest winners of this cycle. So if we actually take a look at the Solana network outage history, okay, in 2021, we saw a partial outage. Here we saw a 17-hour outage for Solana, another partial one. In January of 2022, multiple outages, 16, 10, 8-hour outages over here. We saw another one in April that was 2 hours. We saw another one in May for 5 hours, in June for 4 hours. And yeah, you can see here that Solana did also experience some big network outages in 2022. Not so much in 2023. It saw another one here in 2024 for 4 hours and 46 minutes. And the point being is that, yeah, these network outages were pretty much insignificant. Solana has still been one of the biggest winners of this bull cycle, as it is up, over 10x from its cycle lows. In fact, if we actually go ahead and measure that here real quick, I do think it's worth looking at. I think there are a lot of parallels to be made between Solana and SUI, just in terms of, both of them. Solana really benefiting last cycle from that narrative of being the fastest blockchain, and SUI is actually now the fastest blockchain, as we did compare some of those stats in previous videos. Yeah, so we can see here, like from December of 2022, where Solana was sitting at about the $8 level, it's up about 2,950%, okay? And clearly nobody seemed to care about those network outages. So that's the point I was making in that video. And yeah, we can also just take a look at the on-chain data and see that SUI still was one of the top 3 chains in net flows over the past week as well. Now, I do want to take a look at the VanEck SUI ETN. So basically, this is an investment product 100% backed by SUI token, stored at a regulated crypto custodian and tradable like an ETF on regulated stock exchanges in certain jurisdictions. So VanEck here did announce this product here, and basically it does allow people to kind of see the price action of SUI without actually owning the underlying asset, and VanEck is buying it on their back end for every dollar that is put into this investment product. And it actually launched on November 7th. I do remember covering it when it launched, and so far it has accumulated 5.58 million in total net assets. So I do think it's really interesting that institutions are making, these investment products for SUI. We did also see Grayscale actually launch their investment vehicle for SUI, and this actually happened on August 7th. If we take a look at the SUI chart, August 7th pretty much corresponds with that local bottom that we did see for this altcoin. Yeah, so we got it right there. That was Monday, August 5th when it hit 46.5 cents. And from there, SUI's up about 623%. So I am looking to see continued institutional adoption and interest in this altcoin. And I do think that the on-chain data shows SUI has been a big winner here over the past couple of months. And I do think this trend will continue for the duration of the bull cycle. Now, in today's video, I did want to talk about the Send token as well. However, I don't want to keep this video too long, so I'm going to cover this in a future video. I think that since we are talking about the SUI token and the weekly news, I do want to spend more time focused on the on-chain data as well as the price action to wrap things up. So for starters, in terms of total value locked, SUI is sitting 8th place here in terms of TVL at 2.15 billion. We can also take a look at this chart here on DeFi Llama. And what I want to do is line up the SUI price with the TVL and just take a look at this correlation, okay? Now, this does make sense because the TVL is denominated in SUI tokens, so as the price is going up, the TVL will be going up as well. If we take a look at the TVL in terms of SUI, it's actually down from all-time highs, which came in at about 863 mil in July, currently sitting at 612 mil SUI tokens on the chain, but the actual increase in the price has led to just an increase in TVL, and SUI does sit in 8th place across all blockchains. Now, what I find interesting as well, if we actually go ahead and go over here to chains, and then if we switch this from being all blockchains to the non-EVM chains, this does paint a different picture here for SUI, in which we can actually see that Solana does dominate in terms of the non-EVM chains. Let me go ahead and switch that here. Yeah, so we got Solana dominating TVL in terms of the non-EVM chains at 20.965 bill, Bitcoin with 4.339 bill, and then SUI in third place with 2.158 bill, taking up about 5.82% of all total value locked across the non-EVM chains, with Bitcoin at 11.7% and Solana at 56.51% respectively. So really cool stuff to see from SUI. I do remain bullish on this altcoin, even though we have seen the price pull back over the past week. The on-chain metrics show that people are flowing into the SUI ecosystem, and I do think that as we see continued adoption and interest in this chain, that the token's price will also appreciate to reflect that. Now, speaking of the price action, we are going to wrap things up taking a look at that. As I said, we will discuss the Send token in a future video. It's not supposed to launch until December, so I'm not in too much of a rush to cover it, just today. And what we can see here is that, over the past week, we definitely have seen a pullback here for SUI. If we measure it from its all-time highs at about $3.93, it did pull back just under 20% from highs, and it has bounced from there, now down about 13%. Now, what I'm going to go ahead and do is flip onto some lower time frames here to show you what I'm looking for in terms of the price action, because if we take a look at the higher time frames, there is not much to go off of, as SUI basically ripped up here to new all-time highs and has just pulled back on this weekly candle. So if we take a look here on some lower time frames, the first area of support that I'm looking for on this altcoin would be about the $3.15 zone. We can see that it did actually act as some support right over here before SUI went and made a run up to all-time highs. It also came close to bouncing off it. It actually did bounce off it at about $3.15 and a half basically, so close enough to that level. And that is the first area of support I would be looking for if it does want to make its way to the downside. And then below that, I would be looking for some support at about the $2.87 zone over here, which we can see did act as support over here multiple times before SUI began and just continued on its leg up to $3.93. Now, my upside target for this altcoin, if we do see it actually move to the upside, would simply be for it to make its way back up to those all-time highs at $3.93. $3.93. And on a break above that, this altcoin is effectively in price discovery mode, making new all-time highs. So downside target, first one is going to be 315. Below that, looking at about the 280 zone, I believe I said. And then the upside target would just be a retest of that $3.93 zone up there. So on that note, I hope you all enjoyed the content in today's video. I hope you are all staying happy, safe, and healthy, and I hope to catch you in the next one. Peace out for now.